Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Eagles come back from 10 points down to beat Patrick Mahomes at Arrowhead. Who can claim they're better than Philly? Also, we heard Zach Wilson wasn't the problem with the Jets offense, but now he's getting benched. And the Timberwolves can keep this hot start going. We'll tell you why. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Eagles and the Chiefs squared off on Monday Night Football, trying to salvage what was an otherwise pretty uninspiring week of NFL football. It was a Super Bowl rematch in Kansas City. The Chiefs were the favorites, and at 17-7, they seemed to be in control of the game. But the Philadelphia Eagles started to exert their will a little bit, some sloppy turnovers in the second half, and the Chiefs just didn't have the same sort of juice we're used to seeing. The Eagles pull out a 21-17 win to say, hey, look at us. We are the best team in the NFL right now. Gino Camilleri from Locked On Eagles joins me now. And Gino, this was a Philadelphia team that had not played, I think, super inspiring football to date, but they just keep winning. It feels like they needed this. I don't think they really did. But so what do you take away from this?
Honestly, Pete, if you look at the landscape of the NFC, they needed this. Look at Detroit's right on their heels. San Francisco continues to win. Dallas got 2 more wins since that bye week game. And now you come into Arrowhead, one of the hardest places to play in an environment where it's torrential downpours. Nothing is going the Eagles' way. You have a miscommunication with A.J. Brown that turns into an interception. And the defense is just this little glimmer of hope all game that just got a couple of stops and held the Chiefs to a field goal now and then. They allowed them to score 2 touchdowns, which that's fantastic when it comes to defending Kansas City. But the Eagles' offense, once again, they were down double digits. And once again, Jalen Hurts overcame a double-digit deficit on the road against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
You talk about the top 2 guys in the league, you just saw them. You just saw the best 2 quarterbacks in the NFL. NFL, you're welcome for getting all these eyes that are going to be viewed into that game and on the replay of this game. I mean, that's a classic right there that you saw. Hats off to Kansas City. Andy Reid put together a great performance, Steve Spagnuolo as well. But this Eagles team, it just goes to show it's so much more than the X's and the O's because they got outcoached. I mean, it's simple as that. You don't need to have a PhD in football to understand that. But winning and situational football are 2 things that go hand in hand, and the Eagles just know how to do it. They know how to put together great drives late in games to put together points. They can get turnovers when it matters, back the Chiefs up, get multiple drives where the Chiefs don't score points. When I say multiple, I mean an entire half of drives where the Chiefs don't score points. They pitched a shutout. They Mariano Rivera, one of the best offenses, one of the best quarterbacks of all time.
Look, I was just clearing out, letting you cook there, was enjoying all of that, but I have to push back a little because if Marquez Valdes-Scantling holds onto the ball with 1:42 left,
absolutely,
like we might be talking about a different situation. You have to get a little bit lucky here. At the same time, the Eagles went into Arrowhead and won a game where they only generate 238 yards of total offense because they held Pat Mahomes to $177 on 43 attempts. That is less than 4 yards per pass. That is like Dorian Thompson, Robinson, Kenny Pickett level stuff. Just quickly, defensively, what did you see from Philadelphia that allowed them to be so effective, aside from Jedi mind tricking MVS into making that drop at the end of the game?
One will not catch the football.
Yes.
Marquez Valdes-Scantling will not catch the football. And it takes luck, Pete. I mean, 100%. The Eagles did some things in that game that were just downright disgusting. I mean, multiple stretches where you go run, designed quarterback run on 3rd and 10 when your quarterback has a banged up knee. Yes, the Eagles did some things where they definitely shot themselves in the foot, and you have to get lucky. The refs called another horrific game. We know that. But what I learned tonight from the defense, I always had that question of, can they win a Super Bowl for you. Because if the offense isn't getting going like they have tonight, and that has been the case for, I would say, half of the season at this point, the defense is good enough with a defensive line that, as good as that front was last year and as special as that secondary was, with the guy that's in Arizona right now, you finally have a coordinator that knows how to manipulate these guys on a chessboard to make even the best. Even Patrick Mahomes makes some throws tonight where you're like, that didn't seem like Patrick Mahomes. Like, why is he off on this throw? And testament to Sean Desai and that defense for just continuing to hit home. Was it ugly in the first half? Absolutely. Were you set up in bad positions with special teams and the offense not giving you any breaks, going back-to-back 3-and-outs, getting you right back on the field? So what do you do in the second half? You say, you know what? If we're going to have to go win this thing, let's do it in a manner that nobody thought we could. Let's go pitch a shutout. Let's go do what we have to do to make this game not a repeat of February. What couldn't they do in February, Pete? They couldn't get Pat Mahomes off the field in that second half. They did it every single time.
Stay up to date all year on the Philadelphia Eagles by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, Zach Wilson is out and Tim Boyle is in for the Jets. Before we get to that, the Broncos lost a key defender for the next 4 games. We're into the second half of the NFL season, and now is the best time to turn your sports knowledge into cash with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, what are you waiting for? The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, teasers, and more. There's also tons of weekly promos and boosts to give you plenty of opportunities to increase your payout. Over in the NBA, the Hawks host the Pacers in a matchup of 2 Eastern Conference teams off to nice starts. FanDuel has the Hawk favored by 3.5 points in this one. You can also combine bets for a bigger payout. Same game parlays are a great way to watch sports. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and do the NFL season right. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever sports 24/7 streaming channel. Denver Broncos safety Kareem Jackson has been suspended without pay for 4 games for repeated violations of player safety rules, the result of his first tackle since he returned from his last suspension for dangerous hits. Jackson lowered his helmet and hit Minnesota quarterback Josh Dobbs less than 2 minutes into Sunday's 21-20 Broncos win. Jackson is a 14-year veteran in his 5th season with the Broncos. He got the suspension on Monday morning from NFL Vice President of Football Operations, John Runyon, a former NFL player himself. Runyon said in the letter, "On the play in question, you lowered your head and delivered a forceful blow to the shoulder and head neck area of an opponent when you had time and space to avoid such contact. You could have made contact with your opponent within the rules, yet you chose not to. It is a choice he has made repeatedly and clearly has not learned from the punishments that he has been levied." Sean McVay confirmed the injury situation with 2 key offensive players, Cooper Kupp and Kyren Williams. Kupp is day-to-day with a sprained ankle, while Williams will return to the field Sunday. McVay said the goal for Kupp is to play in Week 12 against the Arizona Cardinals, and that there's a real possibility he could be available. McVay confirmed Williams will make his return against the Cardinals from an ankle injury that landed him on IR. Williams had amassed 456 yards and 7 total touchdowns before the injury. In a court filing Monday, the New York Knicks said they're seeking more than $10 million in damages from the Toronto Raptors as part of a lawsuit alleging the theft of thousands of confidential files. The Knicks also argued the NBA Commissioner Adam Silver shouldn't arbitrate the dispute, in part because of his close relationship with Raptors Governor Larry Tannenbaum. The Knicks filing came in response to the Raptors' October 6th motion to dismiss the Knicks' initial complaint and have Silver arbitrate the dispute. This is a lot of back and forth in all of this. The Knicks argued Tannenbaum's position as the chairman of the NBA's Board of Governors would create a conflict of interest. The Knicks are mad about something and they want their money. The St. Louis Cardinals are bringing back Lance Lynn for their starting rotation.
That's right. Lance Lynn, the same guy that they had way back when. He's back. I'm a little bit in shock about the signing. 1 year plus an option. Guarantees $10 million in 2024 plus a $1 million buyout on the option. This, according to John Heyman's tweet, by the way, could be worth about $26 million over 2 years with escalators. Started with the Cardinals, obviously, lives nearby in Southern Illinois. He's pending a physical on this deal, which is supposed to take place tomorrow. And I know that people like Lance Lynn. The personality of Lance Lynn is great. He's always been an entertaining guy. We enjoyed him when he was with the Cardinals. Bring some fire, which is great. I'm all for that. I think he's going to be an awesome personality in the clubhouse. My question about this is, what was the rush in signing him now?
After falling to the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, the New York Jets have fallen, speaking of fallen, to 4-6, and they're behind the 8 ball in the AFC. If they want to give Aaron Rodgers a chance to make history and come back sooner than we've ever seen anyone come back in the NFL, he claims, and it looks like, Zach Wilson no longer the answer in New York, if he ever was. Tim Boyle is going to be starting this week for the New York Jets. John Butchko from Locked On Jets joins me now to try and explain to the audience, John, who that is.
There's a quarterback they brought in the offseason. He's spent time, I think, in Green Bay, in Detroit. He was supposed to be the third string quarterback. You know, the classic, he knows the system guy you bring in is like your number 3 quarterback. He actually played pretty well in the preseason against the Giants. He came into the game on Sunday against Buffalo in the second half as the Jets benched Zach Wilson. Look, I mean, this reminds me of the saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. Is Tim Boyle going to save the Jets season? Probably not. The Jets just had to do something at quarterback. This offense was not producing, and it's not all Zach Wilson's fault. So Zach Wilson is a part of the failure, but this is an offense where the line has been decimated by injuries. They don't really have much at receiver outside of Garrett Wilson. You know, Alan Lazard, who they signed from Green Bay, has been a major disappointment this year. After him, it gets very thin, very fast. I don't think Nathaniel Hackett's doing a very good job as coordinator, but something big needed to change. And it's not all his fault. Zach Wilson is the quarterback of this team, and he hasn't been playing very well. And I mean, this offense, I'll take you through their performance since week 5. Week 5 against Denver, they had 1 touchdown. It was a Breece Hall 70-yard run for a touchdown. The next week against Philadelphia, they had 1 touchdown. It was a Breece Hall run on the first play of a series where the Eagles let them score because it was one of those late game situations where the Jets just could have run the clock down and kicked the game-winning field goal. They had their bye week. The next game they played was against the Giants. They scored 1 touchdown. It was Breece Hall taking a 50-yard pass to the end zone. They then went 2 straight games without a touchdown. Against Buffalo, they scored 1 touchdown, and that drive required 2 fourth down conversions, including a fake punt. This offense just isn't putting the ball in the end zone, and at some point you have to make a change for the sake of making a change, even if you don't really believe Tim Boyle's the answer. Maybe he can give you a spark the way Mike White had for like 1 week the last couple of years.
Yeah, and all of this with the backdrop of Aaron Rodgers, the reporting that he is targeting a return date in mid to late December. We'll see exactly what that looks like. I remain dubious. I think this all raises the question, though, John. You know, you see what's going on in Minnesota with Josh Dobbs. The Browns bring in Joe Flacco, who has spent time in New York over the last few seasons. There were some options out there at the trade deadline. Why did New York stick with Zach Wilson instead of trying to bring in, let's say, a Jacoby Brissett or some of these other veteran backups that potentially could have been targets for them a couple weeks ago?
You know, I'd even go back beyond the trade deadline. I never understood the plan, and this is not a second guess. This is something I said before the start of the season. I can produce the tapes from Locked On Jets. I just don't understand what the team's approach has been at backup quarterback, because Zach Wilson being the backup was a bad idea from the outset. And it's almost, to me, and you know, I guess I'm putting my conspiracy hat on, like they were afraid that people would question them because, hey, this is the number 2 pick and he's not even one of your top 2 quarterbacks. I think maybe they rolled the dice that it wouldn't come to that Aaron Rodgers would stay healthy, and I think it's come back to hurt them.
Yeah, and all of this with the backdrop of Aaron Rodgers, the reporting that he is targeting a return date in mid to late December. We'll see exactly what that looks like. Let me throw a conspiracy at you. Speaking of conspiracies, my conspiracy, and I don't think it's a conspiracy, is that the Jets didn't do anything essentially out of deference to Aaron Rodgers. This idea, oh, he can come back. So they said, okay, well, we're not going to do the thing that would probably be smart, knowing he's probably not going to come back. Go and try and make a move. No, we don't want to upset the apple cart with Aaron Rodgers. What do you think of that idea?
I can't say whether it's true or not, but what I will tell you is that this team has shown an extreme degree of deference to Aaron Rodgers since he has arrived. Even before he arrived, they hired Nathaniel Hackett. That was a move designed to try and help get Aaron Rodgers, convince him to come to the Jets. And they brought in Alan Lazard, they brought in Randall Cobb, they brought in Billy Turner, they brought in a lot of former Packers. So, I don't think I'd be surprised if that was the case. And I'm with you. Last week on Sunday Night Football, they said Aaron Rodgers, was running on the treadmill. He was putting 50% of his weight on his foot. I mean, I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. Recoveries happen, at a faster rate than they used to. Modern medicine's amazing, but is the guy going to go from being able to put half of his weight on a foot to being in condition to play an NFL game in 7-8 weeks? I mean, that seems like a lot to me.
Stay up to date on the New York Jets by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Jets on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the T-Wolves have gotten off to a great start, and there are signs it will continue. Minnesota Timberwolves have the best record in the West. Now, it is crazy early, but Locked On Wolves host Ben Beacon tells Locked On NBA's Jackson Gatlin that this will continue.
I mentioned it right off the top. I mean, they had a tough schedule. Like, they've beaten good teams, and I think that feels a little better than like if they'd been beating up on the Pistons and the Hornets. And yeah. So I think that's part of it. The other thing is nothing really jumps off the page is like, this feels like an outlier, right? If anything, they have things that are gonna improve, like Cat's 3-point shooting. It would be maybe first and foremost there. But like, I guess maybe the defense in general, the first 8-9 games was just so incredibly good. But you figure like that's sustainable because you have Rudy Gobert, you have Jaden McDaniels, you have Anthony Edwards, who's proven to be a good on-ball defender. So I don't know that there's anything where you're like, oh, small sample size. Everything kind of feels like the best case scenario of what everybody wanted it to be, what Tim Connolly thought he was putting together. And the other thing is Ant's only going to get better. Karl Anthony Towns is only going to, he missed a chunk of last year. He's just now entering his prime. What we've seen from him for the last week and a half is what I think we'll see from him moving forward. So this season, at least, and like next off season and what happens when, Cat's Supermax kicks in, that's another question. But for the next, 70-ish games and into the playoffs, hopefully, this feels very sustainable. And they've had some rest advantage games, and they'll have some more back-to-backs as the season goes on. But in general, this has been a tough schedule. They've been there's no crazy outlier performances to this point, really. And it feels like their calling card is going to be a top 3 or 4 defense and hopefully a middle of the pack offense. That's the other thing, is the offense is hovering around 20th in efficiency. So I don't think it's going to get worse. I mean, it was 23rd last year. Like it probably is only going to get better, and the defense is mostly sustainable too. So I think we're looking at legitimately one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the Western Conference, if not a top 2 team in the West when it's all said and done.
I buy it, and I buy it for 2 reasons. Defense travels. It matters in the playoffs. We know that. And their defense, they're figuring out how to use Rudy Gobert defensively. Everything is coming together defensively for them, in part because Anthony Edwards has taken that next step. It's not just at the end of the game locking down Jason Tatum in a moment that will create highlights and win a game, but Anthony Edwards taking that proverbial next step as a superstar player, someone who wants to, for a 5-game stretch at the end, take every shot and make every play. It's not just about the shot. It's about finding the right man. It's about getting a key rebound. It's about taking the defensive challenge. His evolution means that he is moving into, he's not there yet, but moving into that space where you go, okay, if you have this guy, you are a legit bona fide contender. They have a roster that is starting to make more sense than it did a year ago with the way that they're playing. And with Anthony Edwards taking that step and the defense looking the way that it does, That is a formula that works, especially while the rest of the West is trying to figure out their own identities. With the Lakers dealing with injury issues and age problems. The Nuggets have their own injury issues to deal with. The Warriors do not look as consistent as we've seen the Warriors, even non-KD crazy, we know they're better than everyone else Warriors. Why not the Wolves with the way that they're playing? And it's a way that they can sustain not just the rest of the season, but in the postseason as well. And finally, Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, and Chase Utley headline the list of newcomers to the 26th Player Baseball Writers Association of America Hall of Fame ballot. Players must receive 75% of the vote to gain induction into the Hall of Fame, with the top holdover from last year's vote, Todd Helton, 72%, just under the threshold. Beltre should be a lock as a first-year candidate after finishing with over 3,100 hits in his career and 477 home runs. Only Mike Schmidt and Eddie Matthews have more wins above replacement at third base in their career than Beltre. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe for the first ever national 24/7 streaming sports channel. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, who's leading the way for NFL MVP? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.